Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am so excited for this video today because we have an end of year book wrap up. I am covered with books here on the floor and I've got my questions all ready for our end of year book tag. So I am going to go through and answer a whole bunch of questions about a bunch of the books that I read this year as a little wrap up. And let's just jump right into it. What I will say kind of right off the bat is obviously these are not all of the books that I read this year, and I'm also filming this at the kind of beginning of December, so there's definitely still some time left in the year to continue reading, but I thought this would be a great time to do my full book wrap up for the year, to answer some kind of interesting questions and maybe talk about some of the books that I haven't really spoken about or done like a reading vlog on in the past year as I've started making more book videos. So settle in. It's a kind of comfy, cozy vibe today, so I hope you guys enjoy and let's get right into it. Alright, our first question is the new favorite author that you discovered this year. I actually have 3 answers for this, but I only have 2 physical books for this answer. So my first one is Kate Morton, who wrote Homecoming. This was my first book. I'm already dropping books. This was my first book by this author and I absolutely fell in love. Like literally everything about this book I am completely obsessed with. Essentially, it's a really just like kind of like a sweet, a little bit like heartwarming but heart-wrenching at the same time depiction of family and friends and love, really, but it's also a mystery. So it was just such an interesting kind of combination of a couple different genres, but such like a beautiful story of family and relationships, and yeah, just a beautiful story that she wrote about them. But then the mystery, like subplot or main plot, I guess, was also just so interesting. I literally read probably half of this book like in one sitting, finishing the entire thing because it was actually just so good. I literally sat on the floor of the bus and finished like literally half of this entire thing because I was just so captivated the entire time, and I don't think I can say enough good things about this. I haven't heard anything about this author or this book particularly in the last little while, and I am so happy that I randomly picked it up one day because I am completely obsessed with this. I already bought another book by her and I'm really excited to get to that at some point next year because I think this could be one of my like all-time favorite new authors. By the way, for a couple of these prompts, like I do have like a couple books for each prompt, so just a heads up, this might be a long video, so settling. The next one I have is T.J. Who is not necessarily a new author to me because I actually read, you can't see, my little bookshelf is kind of right above me here. I actually read Under the Whispering Door by him last year or something, and I didn't love it. Like I loved the concept of it, and then the end kind of fell off for me a little bit. But I picked up Wolf Song this year and that is in a reading vlog and I am completely obsessed with this. This felt like a whole different person writing this book. The writing style was so interesting that I was just completely captivated right from the very beginning, and I am absolutely in love and obsessed with this book, and I genuinely feel like this is a whole different writer from Under the Whispering Door. So yeah, I am very, very excited to continue this series. It's a 4-book series. Essentially, it is like a little bit of a romance series, but the writing is so interesting. I don't even know like how to describe this book. It's really kind of a huge found family plot. Essentially, these kind of mysterious, I'll say, neighbors move in next door to our main character who lives with his mom. He's kind of like that late teenage, early 20s stage of life at the beginning, and we kind of see the relationship develop between him and now these new neighbors that just moved in down the street. As you can kind of tell, they have some secrets, and this is a fantasy series, so the world feels very much like our own, although there's so many really interesting concepts and different kind of things that exist in this world that Clune created, and genuinely like On the front cover of this is a quote that says, "Wolfsong is so well written that I'm in awe of TJ Klune's talent." That is literally exactly how I felt with this book, and like a new favorite author, I'm so glad that I again randomly picked this up and absolutely fell in love. I already bought the second one in the series and I'm very excited to continue. The writing was so interesting and unique, and if you want to hear a little bit more about my kind of opinions while I was reading this book, go ahead and check out that video, because that's all I have to say. The next book or author for this prompt I don't have, because I actually listened to this as an audiobook. There's a little bit of controversy about whether like audiobooks are like reading and that whole thing, so I'm not going to say that I read this book, because I did in fact listen to this book. That's Liane Moriarty, who wrote Here One Moment. This book was incredible. My mom actually recommended it to me and said please listen to the audiobook, because the way that she wrote each character, like from the very beginning, is so on point, like so incredible, that the world that she built was so real. It's not like a fantasy series or anything, I think it's just like a general fiction, but it was absolutely incredible. Honestly, the kind of story is about this, I mean it's in multiple different kind of perspectives, but the basis for the story is it's this lady who boards a flight and starts giving predictions about when each passenger will die and of what cause. And something clearly happened, because this person is actually a psychic, but randomly just starts dealing out these predictions essentially to all the unsuspecting passengers on the flight. And as you can kind of imagine, there are a lot of characters on this flight that react to this information in very different ways, and especially as predictions start like coming true, some weird things kind of go down throughout all of these characters' lives, and we start to learn everything that kind of led up to the moment of boarding the flight, and then seeing everything that's really happened after this time, and like how did we get here and who are all the diverse characters that have now entered this world. Cannot recommend this book enough. So good. I literally would have skipped over it because this is so terrible, but like I don't like the look of the cover. I totally understand why the cover is the way that it is, and it makes perfect sense for the plot of the book, but I don't like the look of the cover. So my mom recommended it to me for audiobook. I downloaded it and listened to it on my drive back home, and it was absolutely incredible. Please read that. I hope at least from this video you do get some recommendations of books, and you walk away with some of them. That is my goal for this video. And Liane Moriarty, now I need to certainly read some more books by her. Okay, we're only question number 2. Most disappointing book of the year. Guys, unfortunately, I literally have, I think, 4 books for this prompt. Most disappointing books of the year. Alright, Ignite Me. The Shadow Me series, I have so much to say about this. The first few books I absolutely loved. This is the 3rd book in the Shadow Me series, and it was incredibly disappointing. I loved the writing and the plot from the first 2, and then got to this one, thumbs down, and it's so beautiful. That's what makes it so much more painful. Flopped. Totally. Plot went off the deep end, on the wrong side, and this book is like a 10-book series or something like that. This is the last one that I will be reading in that series, which is really unfortunate because I loved the first 2. This is essentially a dystopian series about this girl named Juliet. She has a lethal touch, so when she touches somebody, obviously they die, and so she's kind of like in some kind of like a prison cell, essentially being held captive, because duh, in this kind of like post-apocalyptic kind of vibe or scene that we're in. And the government body is called the Reestablishment. They're essentially trying to break her out of this like prison or holding cell in order to use her power, you know, to gain more control, like to weaponize kind of the power that she has. Such a cool idea for a series, and the way that it was written, I was like in love with the first book. It turns into like a bit of a romance plot, and literally this whole book just was so disappointing. It completely fell off for me, and I am done with the series. Would highly recommend the first one though. We got a couple other ones in a disappointing category. I read this in a reading blog, The Writing Retreat. I don't know much to say about it. Go watch that reading blog if you're interested, but like, why did we throw in 18,000 plots and try and make them all fit together? This was irrelevant. The story sounds really interesting. It's essentially about like these girls that are writers, and they like submit a piece of writing to this competition where they can like stay at this mystery author's like mansion or something, and then like basically like stay there for a week and like learn principles. I don't know, she can like help them publish like their first novel or like, you know, something like that. So they win this trip and she actually wins it, but so does her ex-best friend, so there's like obviously some drama there. And the whole book was going well until like the end. I don't know why we threw in 18 million different plot points and different things that had to be there, which like just didn't need to happen. And this was wild. Like, I don't even understand what I just read because it was crazy, and do with that what you will. Alright. It was also her debut novel, so I feel kind of bad, but like, okay, girl, you're doing too much. Book Eaters, sadly. Book Eaters has a really interesting plot, and I also think it just fell off at the end, so it's a little bit depressing. I actually bought those two at the exact same time. Book Eaters essentially is this world where in order to live, these people need to eat books, but they don't just eat books for food, because as soon as they eat a book they also retain the knowledge that that book had, and they remember everything like perfectly, which is such an interesting plot and was really cool for like the different genres that you kind of like read or have to eat. For example, like as a child, if you were like punished, you had to like eat the dictionary because it's really like bland and like boring and there's no like story to it, you know, that kind of thing. So it's such a cool plot, and the main character in this book is a mother, and her son actually has a different taste, and that is for human minds. So this mom now needs to find a way to feed her son. The issue is, if similarly to how when you retain the knowledge of books you get all of that knowledge, unfortunately this same kind of thing happens, but when they eat minds they gain all of the knowledge of the people that they just ate. And obviously as like a 6-year-old boy who's now eating minds of like, you know, 40, 50-year-olds, it can get kind of intense about what this book is. But it started off really well, and unfortunately I think also just fell off at the end personally. But really unique concept, and if you like it, I would like decently recommend this. I don't remember anything about this book. It was a mystery and it was bad. I'm so sorry, but that's all I need to say. Underdog book. I've got two for this one. Number one, The Handyman Method. This is written by two authors. It is a horror written by two authors who are both Canadian. Such an underdog book. I've never heard of it before, and I'm so happy that I picked this up randomly because it was amazing. So incredible. I felt like I was in a movie, completely watching everything that was happening here. It's about this family that moves into this like brand new like development and like housing development kind of thing, but like some weird things start to happen. Like obviously this house is brand new, and so the things that they're starting to notice when they move in like shouldn't really be happening for like a brand new build, a brand new construction house. And everything about, I mean, look at that photo. Truly, everything about this, like it gets really dark and twisty and creepy, but just to the right amount that it is so entertaining. The characters are so weird and acting so strangely that like I was eating this up. This is amazing. Please, please go read it. Please. It was so good. Number two is Drowning by T.J. Newman. This book is a mystery. T.J. Newman actually was a previous flight attendant turned author. This book is so amazing. This is actually their second book, and the entire mystery of this book was so fast-paced, so high energy. Obviously you can kind of tell like what's happening, and all of the different characters that are kind of like in this flight when, as you can tell, what happens were so well written, and the mystery of it was so good. The creativeness of kind of like the sci-fi-esque things that they're coming up with in order to rescue this drowning flight, so inventive, so creative. I found it really similar to, I have it up here, Chris Hadfield's The Apollo Murders. I love that like sci-fi kind of like you need to rescue like really high intense, like really like high pressure, high tense scenario where they're all like, you know, working in, what are those like rooms called when you're trying to send someone to space? What's like the room with all the TVs? I'm gonna put it because I forget. The like data room or whatever. When you can hear everyone like running around in those movies, you hear them like all talking over each other, there's like papers flying everywhere, hear the computers, that like vibe. So good. But this one is also goes into different points of view into the past of the characters' lives who are now trapped on this flight. The This is the second one that this author has ever written. Immediately bought the first one, have not read it yet, so that's on my 2025 TBR, and they literally just released a third book, so yeah, I bought that one too. So good, so good. Okay, overhyped books for this year. I think this was a right book, wrong time. One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. I did not buy the second book, which is in this duology, which is Two Twisted Crowns. One Dark Window is a gothic fantasy. I did read this in a reading vlog, so if you want to go check that out, you are welcome to. It's this gothic fantasy that is such an interesting plot, which is essentially there's this like mist that's taken over this town, and our main character actually has Nightmare, who's like a character living in her brain, and Nightmare is like feeding different types of information, but she's trying to keep that part like hidden. In this society, there are 12 magical cards that need to be collected in order to get rid of the mist and kind of like rid the evil from this like atmosphere. And so they go on kind of this like mystery adventure plot to try and like get the last few cards underneath the king's kind of establishment in order for our main characters to like, you know, eradicate the mist, that sort of thing. I do think this was a little bit of right book, wrong time, so I might pick this back up in like a year or two and kind of give it another chance, because I don't know why, I just really didn't connect and attach, and I felt really disconnected from the characters and it was really throwing me off, so I might come back to this. So overrated. Oh my god, so overrated. I cannot hear about this book one more time. I know that the other ones are coming out right now. I think the novella just came out, and I think Reckless is the second one, and I think there's a third one that comes out in 2025 to this. I think it's supposed to be a trilogy. The problem with Powerless for me was that the beginning was so good and it completely fell off. And I got really upset by that, because the world that we constructed in this is essentially like this kind of competition happens in this world. There's obviously like a kind of a poverty, you know, city that's existing here, and then there's the elite, kind of, you know, the kings and whatnot that are living in this community, and every year the kings kind of put on this like battle to the death by like taking people from like the slums of the city and just like pitting them against each other with like, you know, different powers and stuff that they have. That's like really cool. There's two groups, the elites and the ordinaries. Elites obviously have powers, and ordinaries, such as our main character, which Payden is, have no powers. And Payden is pretending that she has powers in order to fit in with the elites and go to this kind of wild competition to fight for, you know, you kind of get the gist of that, right? I'm sure you've heard about this book. The problem for me was it started off so good and I was so in love with it, and then by the kind of midway till the end, I was really upset because the romance took over to a point where I thought it moved so fast and we just like forgot that we're fighting to the death. Like, if we're gonna do something like this, please keep up with the theme. Please like finish out the mystery, finish out the main plot of the book, and don't get sidetracked by a boy. I don't know. Okay, we're done. Overhyped. Done. We are now moving on to my favorite main characters of the year. The first one I'm going to start with is a book that I read on my phone, which is Funny Story by Emily Henry. Daphne, for sure, was just like a favorite character for me this year. She is a children's librarian, like a program manager at like a library, and yeah, I connected with her so much because her job seemed so cool, and it made me want to just work at a library immediately because she was so cute and so sweet and like just trying to get through life kind of a thing. This is like kind of a romance, I mean it's an Emily Henry like romance book kind of thing. I'm like trying to get into the genre more. Do you see where I'm going with this? Anyway, it was really good. She ends up rooming with this, like being a roommate to this guy named Miles, who unfortunately both Miles and Daphne just got out of engagements because their partners are now dating each other and they're getting married to each other. And now Miles and Daphne are like stuck single alone living in this apartment together. You can see where we're going here. The characters were just really cute and I really liked Daphne. So that's my reasoning for that. I don't think I need to explain this much. Violet Sorrengail, she's great and I love her, and that's all I need to say about that. Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone is such a great book. If you haven't heard me talk about it before, you haven't heard of this book before, please go read it. There is a second one which I have read as well. It's kind of up on my shelf there. But this is such an awesome awesome book. My favorite character from this is actually the narrator, because the way that he like talks to you is a really like exaggerated kind of tone. Like this is the summary to give you like a little bit of an example, okay? Everyone in my family has killed someone. Some of us, the high achievers, have killed more than once. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but it is the truth. Some of us are good, others are bad, and some just unfortunate. Have I killed someone? Yes, I have. Who was it? Let's get started. And then every kind of page, like in the beginning essentially of this book, it gives you rules for the book, and it says to please fold over this corner of the page so you can return. And they have a bunch of different rules which must be followed in this book. So in the mystery, you must know that number 1, the criminal must be someone mentioned in the early part of the story but must not be anyone whose thoughts the reader has been allowed to follow. 2, all supernatural agencies are ruled out as a matter of course. 3, not more than 1 secret room or passage is allowable. Then, you know, it continues on and on and on. So the way that this author and the narrator like writes is so hilarious but amazing, and just like so comedic, so interesting. Highly, highly recommend. Last one I have for this is from The Last Confession of Autum Casterly. This is a YA book essentially about Autumn and her sister Ivy, and the character for this prompt specifically I'm talking about is Ivy, because Ivy is kind of like this nerd in high school, this like nerdy sister, and Autumn is supposed to be like the big popular like sister. And Autumn has gotten into quite a bit of trouble, and Ivy now needs to kind of wrangle her ragtag group of friends to rescue Autumn from who knows what the danger really is, but she knows that like her sister is in trouble. And it really just kind of explores the kind of deeper you know, things that are going on in their family and all that. Very light-hearted read. Obviously it is a YA. There's some like deeper themes explored, but such a good book. It was such a fast read but a really enjoyable one, so highly recommend. And also I am the nerdy sister, so Ivy, we are the same. Next prompt is good feeling books this year. So I will say again what I read on my phone, which was just like a good feeling book. It's both happy place and funny story. I actually really enjoyed Emily Henry's writing this year. So I'll just say like in general, yeah, good, just good feeling books. Separately I have an audiobook which was Elevation by Stephen King. Amazing. Can't stop thinking about that story. It was so good, so interesting. I don't even want to like say really what it's about. It's not a horror, it's just a general fiction, and the story was so interesting and the characters were so amazing, and I love Stephen King and all of his writing, and please go read or listen to it. Really thoroughly enjoyed my time reading, which I think was kind of what this prompt is about. So the other ones that I have to mention in here are Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I finally read this. I'll talk about it a little bit later in another prompt in this video. Loved. Such a good time. It was actually the last book that I have just finished. Loved. Really enjoyed. Iron Flame is the second book in the series, and the third book in the series comes out in early January, and I am so excited about it. Just like a great time. Fourth Wing is the first book. If you have not heard about it, you are not on Book Talk or BookTube, because, you know, the past year. Anyways, good feeling book. I just thoroughly enjoyed my time reading it, so yay. My most beloved author since I was little, James Patterson. Thoroughly enjoyed this book. If your child is missing, you want the whole world to stop and go look for them. I'm gonna leave it at just that. This is a Detective Michael Bennet thriller. If you know James Patterson, second Detective Michael Bennet is like one of the largest kind of series that we have been running with for I don't even know how many years, and I was obsessed. Most frustrating books I read this year. Obviously, You Started Out So Good, I Am Angry, da. If we know this series, I kind of had to put this in here. Magnolia Parks, this is actually the third book in the series. Magnolia Parks is also this like heartbreaking romance story where honestly the characters are so human, but they are so incredibly flawed. It's about essentially these characters who are the really like high elites society in London, and you know, it's very fun because they have just this like crazy high elite lifestyle basically, and you kind of hear all about the struggles with that, but they are so difficult as a friend group together, and it's amazing. I loved the first book so much, and this is the third one which I have just finished, and I was crying finishing this book. It's very frustrating because the characters are kind of insufferable, which is why people either hate or love this series, and I am in love. I love them so much. I don't even know what else to say. The theme of the series, this like doesn't sum it up, but it does, is how many loves do you get in a lifetime? I'm leaving it at that. All of my love to the series, but the characters can be so frustrating. Okay, we have the longest and shortest books that I have read this year. So my longest book is Almost Homecoming, the first book that I showed. The reason why I say almost is because technically the longest book that I read was the Mindfuck series, but this is technically a book filled with 5 novellas inside. So all in all, it's the longest book, but like technically they're 5 novellas. So, you know, pick whichever one you like, but I absolutely loved this book so much. This is about a serial killer, and they kind of strike up this relationship with somebody, and that somebody happens to be the lead detective in the FBI who is currently working on the case of said serial killer. The best part is the serial killer is the woman and the FBI agent is the man in this book. The killings that go on and like the mystery behind like why she's doing what she's doing, and also I don't know, the implication of the mystery, and obviously this like high tension scenario because like they're chasing each other and like they don't know. That is amazing. Everything about this book I really loved. I loved the kind of like gruesome details of everything that was going on. What can I say? I love this book. Shortest book I read was the Handyman Method, coming in at 292 pages, and Mindfuck series was 683, to give you a little bit of perspective there. Alrighty, we have favorite covers of the year. Oh my goodness, so many favorite covers. First of all, this is absolutely gorgeous. I am so sad that I didn't love this book because I still keep it on display. Very seriously so pretty. I'm absolutely obsessed with it. Throne of Glass, I did start this series last year as well, and all of the new covers I just really love from this entire series. So I gotta say, this is a fantasy series. It's also very popular. I'm not gonna speak much about it. I love this cover. I mean, come on, mate. Like, this is the Shatter Me series. Where is Ignite Me? Over here. Like, I mean, come on. These are proudly displayed in my room, standing up like this, because these covers are everything. I love them so much. I was so sad that I had to stop after Ignite Me, but you know what? These covers are everything. This is Daisy Hates, which is the second book in the Magnolia Parks series, and actually the reason why I'm holding this up, I do love this cover, but I will say in general, like the entire like indie version of these books I'm absolutely obsessed with. I have the entire series in the indie covers because I hate the new covers with a passion, but I love these covers and I love this series. I'm obsessed. I still got many books to go, 2 books that are out right now and 1 book hopefully to follow in the coming years. I'm obsessed. This is a piece of art. I love it. Other covers I'm obsessed with, Drowning and also the other 2 books that I just recently purchased. Like that's gorgeous. And also this tells you exactly what you need to know. It is beautiful. I love everything about this cover. Murder Your Employer, also gorgeous. The gold on this is perfect. This is like a dark academia book about this school, like university basically, which is completely hidden, but it is teaching you how to get away with deleting is the term that we specifically use in this university. This is published as if it is a textbook for somebody who is applying to be a part of the school. So you get a ton of different perspectives, including like the dean who's like literally writing to you applying to this university, which does not exist, about, you know, the different principles of deleting said target to execute said thesis, and then experiences of different students at the school to give you like a little bit of, you know, exposure to student life on campus. And this book in general was awesome, like the creativeness and inventiveness of this book, but also I know this prompt is about the cover, so it's beautiful. Books I haven't stopped thinking about, it's fairly obvious. We've got Drowning again. I mean, we're back to Wolf Song again. The other ones I haven't talked about, obviously Magnolia Parks, the whole series. I'm not even gonna go off on that tangent again. These are the other two books that I absolutely cannot stop thinking about. A Little Life was the most beautiful, terrible, tragic book that I have read. I don't think I have any other words to describe this. Please check trigger warnings if you are going to read this book. This is the most painful experience ever. Everything was so real, but the writing was the most beautiful thing. Genuinely, this author is so talented. I can understand why this book is winning so many awards, because this is the most heartbreaking trauma on every page, learning about this group of friends and the backgrounds that they have and the traumatic events that they have been through and how they are developing as people throughout, you know, their 20s, talking about things that have happened in childhood all the way through until, you know, their later years in life, and the connection that they make and the found family that's in this book, and just everything about each character, and especially the main character in this book is, I actually like can't stop thinking about it. Like, it's kind of painful. Please read this if you are in a good mental headspace. It will put you in a bad one. I'm just gonna say that right off the bat. At least it did for me and like everybody else that I've heard review this book. So this was absolutely incredible. Please do your research about it before you start. And I mean, like, I'll say enjoy because the writing is so beautiful, but at the same time, like, I don't want to recommend this to anybody because it's so terribly painful. I even told my mom, like, I don't want to recommend this to you, but this was like amazing. Amazing. Mr. Mindbomb. This is a book about Bob Hunter, who is the founder of Greenpeace. This book, though, was so interesting because it's written after he has passed, but each chapter is written by a different person in his life and written in like chronological order of like when he had met those people, and they all write about different tales and different stories about like knowing him and his life and loving him and all of the different experience that he like went through during like the foundation of Greenpeace and everything else, and just like his ideologies and the lessons that they remember from him and all of these different things, and the fact that each chapter was in a different voice but of somebody that clearly loved this person so much and like encouraged him so much and just experienced like a different version of him depending on what time of life like they were, you know, introduced to him, was amazing. I can't stop thinking about this. I love this book. I love it. Highly, highly recommend. Alright, we are getting through the list. This is cringiest read of the year. I think we all know where we're going with cringiest read of the year, do we not? Stop yourself. Okay, we're done. By the way, if you like any of these books, this is absolutely zero hate to you. Everybody's allowed to have their own opinions. I hope you love every single book that you read, but we can't always do that. So cringiest read of the year, I was like visibly cringing during Powerless. I'm so sorry, but it's not for me. It is not for me. Okay, we've got a book with the most unique concept coming up. This is where we've got a couple of them. The first one that I'll speak about is Back Again with Here One Moment by Liane Moriarty. Great concept. I already explained it earlier in the video. Amazing concept. Please read. We've got Six of Crows. Six of Crows is a duology, and I do have the second one. I'm very excited to jump into it, and it is also a show on Netflix. I didn't realize for some reason that this is a fantasy series. I mean, I knew that part. It is a fantasy series, but it's also like a magical heist. I didn't realize that this was like a mystery plot that is literally a heist. So Ocean's 11 meets like, yeah, I don't even know what to compare it to, but the found family in this again is amazing. All of the characters have like a decent amount of depth, but also the mystery plot was like so heavy and strong, and the kind of like fantasy world that they built was amazing. Thoroughly enjoyed this. Would heavily recommend. Such an interesting read, and yeah, really, really just like an interesting mystery plot, but also the fantasy world as well. Highly, highly recommend. I also talked about Murder Your Employer. This was such an interesting concept for a book. It literally, in one of the reviews in this book, says like, I can't believe that no one has come up with this yet, and I completely agree. I hope that there is a second one because the world that was built in this school was perfect. Like a dark academia, duh, but also like the Harry Potter vibes of like each different classroom and each different like professor teaching these like crazy concepts, but it's so serious. amazing, loved it. I also wanted to add Eruption to this list as well because, as we know, James Patterson is my favorite author. I thought this was a really unique concept because it was actually written in collaboration with Michael Crichton by Michael Crichton's wife, who provided notes that Michael Crichton had for a novel about a volcanic eruption, but it never got written. And she chose James Patterson to essentially like bring the vision to life and create it. So James Patterson went through all of the research and all of the notes that Michael Crichton had written previously for a book that never got published, and with obviously his wife's blessing, James Patterson was able to come up with this amazing book. I have read separately a bunch of Michael Crichton books as well, and I love his writing, so to be able to combine both of these was such a unique thing. Honestly, like, it had so much more like in-depth kind of like scientific research backed, like geology, science, knowledge, all of that kind of stuff that like you usually get in a Michael Crichton kind of like sci-fi book, mixed with the like intense mystery and like fast-paced like detective work of like James Patterson like characters. And it was really great, truly. It was a great mix of the both of them, and I just think that the concept of it was so unique and so just like sentimental and sweet, and I don't know, I just feel kind of connected to that, and the fact that, you know, his wife did this and chose for this to be brought to life. I just think is really, I don't know, it does something. It does something to me. We are now on to books that I would reread this year. Yes, especially the first few novellas in this book. Yes, so good. Yes, but especially the first one in the series, which I have literally already read twice, and as soon as I finished that book, I read 2 books in between and then literally opened it back up and reread it like right after. So definite yes. This series, but the first book in particular. Yes. There's nothing more I can say. This was incredible. We're down to our last prompts, guys. This is so exciting. What's even more exciting about this prompt is that this is our 2025 TBR, which I wanted to include in this. I actually have way more books on my physical and also mental TBR that I am not mentioning in this video, but here is a brief look into some of the books that are on my 2025 TBR. So first we've got Crown of Midnight, which is the second book in the Throne of Glass series. That's all I'm gonna say about that. Excited to continue this series and really understand kind of where it goes. Crooked Kingdom, which is the second book in the duology Six of Crows. You heard how much I loved it. I'm very excited. Please no spoilers in the comments. Alright. This is a random pickup, even though I knew the end. Kind of like a magical detective mystery. It just looks super, super interesting, and yeah, I definitely want to read this in the new year. Us Against You is the second book in Frederick Bachman's series Beartown. The thing about Beartown is that I actually read the last book of the series, which is sitting over there, The Winners. I didn't know that it was a series at the time, and I picked it up randomly at the airport one day and absolutely fell in love with it. So that's the third book in the series, and I love Frederick Bachman's writing. I have almost every book that he's ever written, and I've been obsessed with every single one of them. So Us Against You, especially because it's set in like kind of a remote, snowy, hockey town in like the winter, it gives like really strong winter vibes. Yeah, I just loved it, especially just like the winter like feel of it. Everything that it described about, like, it's not based in Canada, but felt very much like the feelings that I get in like a Canadian winter, and I just think this would be really good to kind of romanticize the winter, because it can get very gloomy up here and very, you know, seasonal depression-y. So I'm excited for this. A random pickup as well, All the Lonely People. It was giving kind of like Frederick Bachman vibes. Obviously it is not by him, but it's essentially this kind of like a grumpy, from what I'm getting, man who lives in this apartment condo, and he's kind of lonely and like lying about what he's doing in retirement to his daughter, until one day his daughter comes and visits him, and he kind of needs to like potentially make friends. And I'm assuming we are introduced to all of these other characters who live in the apartment building, and I'm sure they're gonna have really like interesting kind of like just like a nice piece about kind of relationships and things like that as we get older, reminding me a bit of the vibes of Anxious People, and I loved that book, so I'm hoping this gives kind of the same energy. Then we've got No Exit by Taylor Adams, which is a mystery thriller about this like rest stop on the side of the highway when all of these people get snowed in, and so now they're standing at this rest stop, and this woman notices that she thinks like a child is being kidnapped and needs to figure out what the heck is happening. Again, winter vibes. It's like in the middle of a snowstorm, trapped in a rest area. I'm glad I'm not reading this now that I'm in the bus, actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's probably good that I'm reading this around family. So yeah, I'm gonna get to this sooner rather than later, hopefully, but winter vibes, and probably not while I'm in the bus. Okay, last on my 2025 TV, well, not last, also my 2025 TBR, we've got The Women by Kristen Hanna. Kristen Hanna has been absolutely blowing up this year, like completely, and I have no idea where to start with her books, except that my mom is in a book club and she actually had to get this for her book club pick this last month, I think. So she lent this to me and said, please read this so we can talk about it like as soon as possible. So this is gonna be my first Kristen Hanna, and probably fairly soon, so I can talk about it with her like as soon as possible. The other two that I have on my 2025 TBR, which I actually don't have on me because I have not purchased them yet. That's a lie. The one that I have pre-ordered is Onyx Storm, which is the third book in the Fourth Wing series. I've already pre-ordered that, so I'm very excited. It comes out like mid-January, I think. So I'm very excited for when that one comes out. And second to that, we have Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney, which is a mystery thriller book as well. I've only read Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney, but the way that she developed her characters was just super interesting, and something about this book, I mean, obviously the cover looks really interesting, and also just something about it is kind of speaking to me. So I believe those are everything that is on my list for my 2025 kind of like, you know, beginning of 2025 at TBR, or more immediate beginning of 2025 at TBR. I will leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining me. I need to clean up all of these books that are surrounding me, but it's genuinely so fun to just sit here and chat about books with you guys. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do want to check out any of my other book videos, I will link that playlist up here. And happy reading over the holiday season. I have a big stack of books right there that I'm bringing on vacation with me next week. As of the time that I'm filming this, so I am so excited, and hopefully we'll have some more books to recommend and review once I get back from that. So I love you guys so much. Happy reading and happy holidays. Merry Christmas if you celebrate. Just remember that every adventure is worthwhile. Keep sharing all these stories. I love you guys. Bye.